another list of more Steven Universe episodes. We're getting close to the top 100, but we still have this one last pack that's just not good enough to get in. Again, none of these episodes are particularly bad. They're just not quite good enough to reach the top 100 because this show simply makes dynamite episodes. So we have to pick out the ones that don't quite make the top cut. And that's okay. These are the Steven Universe rankings right before the top 100. Let's get started already. And a quick reminder, spoilers ahead. The Zoo. After Greg gets kidnapped by Blue Diamond, the gems follow him to the zoo, a space station that is filled with humans that have been kept there against their will. But rather than the prison that we thought it was, it turns out it's more of a paradise. A small little oasis that is designed to fulfill the needs of all the inhabitants there, who have been living there their entire lives. They see nothing wrong with it. And why shouldn't they? They don't know anything else. The fascinating part about this is seeing how this little slice of humanity could exist in such a situation. And even more intriguing is what happens when that paradise is broken by the tenets of Earth. And after all this turmoil, the two of them get caught by the guards and were left hanging to see what their fate is for the next episode. This episode was definitely worth a watch and kept my attention during the entire thing, and that's always a good thing. Historical friction. This episode is really all about Jamie, who is setting a play to the tale of Captain William Dewey, Mayor Dewey's long-lost ancestor, about how Beach City got founded, except there's a problem with the script. Mayor Dewey wrote it, and he made it seem like the captain was completely infallible. According to Jamie, that's just not a great idea. So, after a quick intervention by Pearl, who actually knows the history of it, things get very interesting. Jamie and Steven put on their own play, based on real events, and showing off the character that William Dewey really was. This is a nice little episode that really just kind of showed a bit of backstory, gave Jamie and Dewey a little bit of spotlight, was overall fun, and showed that it really is okay for people to have downfalls. Because the really endearing part about them is that they kept trying and never gave up. And hey, what's wrong with a little art? Serious Steven. This episode starts off strong enough, with a mysterious opening that quickly gets swept under the rug, and then Steven going on yet another gem mission, but this time, he's serious. So serious that he brought his own guitar. Yep, that's about the mood of this episode. They're on a serious mission, and we do get to see some gorgeous imagery and awesome scope, just like Cheeseburger Backpack, but this one lands a bit more strongly. For instance, while Steven is still acting like his childish self, there's something a bit more sinister going on here. They quickly fall into a trap, and there's a lot of action that springs afterwards. Mostly Garnet, of course. In the end, Steven got to figure out the entire thing based on an unfortunate experience with teacups. I mean, who hasn't been there, right? I swear to God, I've never been more nauseous in my life. Everywhere that Cheeseburger Backpack didn't deliver, this episode delivered well. It was fast-paced, it was interesting, Steven was fun, and ultimately he managed to save the day. This was basically Cheeseburger Backpack 2.0. It was just better in every way. See, good things happen when you get serious. Room for Ruby. All this just came out of nowhere, honestly. The Rubies were a significant presence that interrupted the lives of everyone, but as soon as they were scattered into space, we honestly forgot all about them. I mean, what were the chances that one was going to become a falling star and crash right onto Earth? But that's exactly what happened. And ever since we met the Rubies, we noticed that each of them had different personalities, and the one that had the most likable personality, Navy, was the one who'd crashed. And suddenly, we were hit with a very real possibility. Could we be getting another crystal gem? Another ruby, but this one unique to herself? It was very possible. And Navy seemed to like everything about Earth. which Lapis instantly finds suspicious since Lapis herself was honestly scared of everything. And this is really how the episode proceeds. But at the very end, when Navy manages to get them into their ship, that's when the real truth comes out. Navy has tricked all of them, all in an effort to get back to her ship, and goes off into the distance smiling as she leaves with the only spaceship on the whole planet. It's a nice little twist that we honestly couldn't see coming, not until it was too late. And Lapis got confirmation that everything really was scary at first. It was okay to feel that way. Oh well, just like Garnet said.
It was still worth a shot.
Beta. After the turmoil of losing to Jasper and fighting with Steven, Amethyst is still pouting over what she should do, struggling to become stronger and really just living in the shadow of Jasper and the failure that she has perceived herself to be. So Steven tries to cheer her up by bringing her to Peridot and Lapis Lazuli, who we haven't seen in a fair while, and it's honestly nice to see them again. They've transformed the barn into their own little art house, which they call Meat Morps. And it seems like the two of them are really getting along together well in this barn. There was worries that Peridot and Lapis wouldn't get along together at all. To see them bond over crummy love shows and all this weird art, it's, well, relieving and really just kind of nice. And of course, fodder for a lot of people who think that the two of them would make a nice relationship. But that's a whole nother page that we won't turn quite yet. As Peridot learns that Amethyst is really down because of recent events, she decides to show Amethyst just how crummy of a quartz Jasper really is and brings her to the Beta kindergarten. Pointing out all of its flaws, the material of its rock, the odd angles, the bad slopes, and all the misshapen holes that made for crummy quartz.
It was obviously a total rush job.
Peridot's plan backfires when they find Jasper's hole, which, according to her...
Actually, I've never seen an exit hole this perfect.
Which only makes Amethyst even more frustrated. But Steven cheers her up once again by telling her you should be whatever you want to be. And Amethyst solidifies her goal. She still wants to be Jasper. The reason this episode doesn't make the top 100 is pretty clear at this point. It's a nice episode. We got to see Lapis and Peridot again. Peridot is funny as always. Lapis is always cool to see. And it was actually kind of interesting to see where Jasper came from. But mostly this episode didn't deliver on its whole point, cheering up Amethyst. And this of course had a very good reason. It was leading up to Earthlings, which is, quite frankly, one of the best Steven Universe episodes. So basically this whole episode was warm-up, not really meant to be its own episode at all, which is understandable. But in the end we must judge it for itself, and so that's why it lands right here. Gem Heist. Just like the zoo, it is really setting up the entirety of the arc rather than a moment itself, but is a bit more practical in the deliverance of how important this episode is. After rocketing through space, Steven and the gems land at the zoo and try to come up with a quick plan to get through. And surprisingly, thanks to Sapphire's quick thinking, they manage to do just that. This gives us a glimpse at how exactly homeworld gems see other gems and how they operate in everyday life, and their overall behavior, all shown through Holly Agate, who is instantly dislikable. And with it all ending and Steven ending up in a mysterious paradise zoo, well, this is just a solid episode overall. Beach City Drift. I love Stevonnie episodes. Really, anything with Connie is almost guaranteed to be a good episode. But this is definitely the weakest one of the bunch, and for a good reason. After their first negative experience with Stevonnie, Connie and Steven run into the man who was responsible for all that discomfort, Mr. Kevin himself. Ugh, I hate this guy, but I guess that's the whole point, isn't it? Kevin is a really big jerk, stiffing Greg on his bill, treating the kids like crap, and all the while acting all high and mighty. So Connie and Steven decide to put him in his place by beating him at his own game. car racing. They race Kevin all across the mountain, trying to one-up him and leave him in his dust. But then it quickly becomes clear that this need to defeat Kevin has become an obsession and undoes the fusion, because it's revealed how different their feelings are. Really, this whole episode is one of the rare instances where we get to see Steven legitimately angry at someone. Kevin is a creep, and Steven really doesn't like him. I mean, who would? But like Greg said at the beginning, and what Connie explained to Steven later, Kevin's not worth it. So deciding to finish the race on their own terms, Steven and Connie fuse once again, but this time enjoy themselves. Much like Alone Together, this episode starts with a good enough premise, and ends with them light on their feathers after learning an important lesson about being fused. But the middle part is rather negative, and also wasn't as well delivered as their first experience together. So, this episode lands much lower on the list. Not to mention that it wasn't really important in the grand scheme of things. We'd already dealt with Kevin once, we really didn't need it again. Greg the Babysitter. Another flashback episode, another moment where we get to see Greg fall in love with Rose. Though not exactly. This story is about how Greg got into the car wash business, and it's honestly a good enough story. It's not the strongest flashback or story as a whole, but hey, anything with Greg and Rose in it is always good to me. Greg has no money, and he can't wait around all day for Rose to get back from her missions. So he decides to crash at Vidalia's place and babysit her kid while she goes to her job. And by the way, Sour Cream was the coolest baby ever. While babysitting, we get to see how Rose truly sees humans, and a nice little speech about how awesome it is to be one. And it's great to hear this from Rose. Honestly, every time she talks, it's just magic. And then we get a scary moment where Sour Cream goes missing along with Rose, and it's discovered that because she doesn't know much about babies, Sour Cream has ended up on the top of a Ferris wheel. Because, you know, that's what babies do. And the rest is pretty standard. Greg desperately rushes to the top of the wheel to save the baby, gets stuck up there himself, and Rose has to come save him by stopping the wheel with her own two hands. Man, that's pretty impressive. Realizing that he needs to get on with his life and grow up a little, Greg decides to get a job, the local car wash. And that's it. That's the whole story. It's not overly important, but this episode was still nice in a lot of ways, so it's almost to the top 100. Secret Team. This whole series of events starts when Steven and Amethyst discover Pearl with one of Rose's bubble, which happens to contain a number of shards. Upon being busted, Pearl's bubble pops, and the shards turn into giant hand monsters which start spreading all over the temple. Desperate to hide this from Garnet, Pearl and Amethyst agree with Steven to make a secret team. Their mission? Collect all the monsters back into the bubble before Garnet finds out, and never tell anyone. So they do just that, and before you know it, Secret Team has accomplished their objective. In fact, Steven has so much fun with the idea that he wants to keep it going with another mission. But Pearl and Amethyst both are done with Secret Team. They got what they needed out of it. So, Steven begins wandering town, trying to find a way to keep Secret Team alive, before finally confessing to Garnet so that he can form his own secret team with her. So, in order to teach Pearl and Amethyst a lesson, Garnet creates a plan with Steven, using him as the scapegoat to lure both of them into confessing themselves. But just as she's about to deliver her lecture, a giant hand monster appears and begins pummeling all three gems. Things look desperate as the two of them try to find a way out of this situation and finally confess that they never should have hid this from Garnet in the first place. And then it's revealed Garnet was behind it all along. It was just her hands extended through the water. She explains herself with a lesson, and a good one at that. There's no hiding secrets from each other. They're already on a team. The crystal gems. And with a final symbolic gesture, all four of them rip up their secret team membership cards, aka pizza coupons, as they realize the error of their ways. Sure, secret team might have been a fun idea, but in the end there's only one team that matters. Fusion cuisine. The strength of this episode can be found in the relationships that were explored in this. Mainly the relationship between Connie and Steven, and also Steven's relationship with the gems, both of which mature during this episode. Connie and Steven are in a dilemma. After a poorly executed phone call from Garnet,
Hello, this is Mum Universe. Yes, the children are playing swords. Sorry, playing with swords. They're bleeding. Oh no, they are dead. Don't call again. Sorry, I panicked.
Connie's parents will no longer let her hang out until they meet Steven's parents. The problem? Connie told them that Steven has a mom and a dad and lives with them, both of which is untrue. So unfortunately, Steven has to meet with Connie's parents with his own parents. The problem is, bringing any one of the gems could spell disaster. Garnet being a particularly poor conversationalist, Amethyst being Amethyst, and Pearl being the perfect mother to bring, but being unable to eat food because it totally grosses her out. So Steven comes up with a bright idea. Why not have them all fuse and come together as one? Which leads to the most awkward dinner and meeting of parents of all time. Things quickly spiral out of control as the fusion, Alexandrite, is A, unable to eat any food because Pearl is grossed out, B, is tall enough to pick up the whole building that they're at, C, is still talking very poorly, and D, Steven is freaking out more than anyone. Things go from bad to worse when Alexandrite completely unfuses, revealing the horrible truth, leading Connie and Steven to run away in embarrassment. For a moment, we don't know where this episode is heading. The two of them are on a bus and running away from home. But that's when Alexandrite comes roaring down and stops them cold in their tracks. Just as Connie's parents are about to lecture Connie for a decision, we hear the gems lecture Steven for the exact same thing. And it's actually kind of a cool scene to see, that Steven's family really are the gems, and that they really are his mothers, his caretakers, the ones who look after him and teach him what's right from wrong. And seeing this, Connie's parents are completely convinced that they are responsible parents, and that Connie is more than welcome to hang out with Steven. This doesn't resolve all the issues, particularly the ones Connie has with her parents, but it's still a nice resolution of everything, and honestly a great way to finally see the true family aspect of Steven Universe. Steven may not have his mother anymore, but he's definitely always had his family. Lion 2, the movie. Lion has always been one of my favorite characters, but there's no doubt in my mind, this is his worst performance. It's not bad. Honestly, nothing with Lion is bad. But honestly, this episode didn't really need to happen. Really, the most interesting part of this episode was how Connie felt that she didn't really belong in Steven's magical and awesome world, with Steven confirming to her that he wanted her there, and he wanted to hang out with her regardless of how everything went down. And thanks to Lion's help, instead of going to the movie, they ended up in Rose's armory, where they discovered a whole bunch of interesting stuff. Then they accidentally activated an elemental bot that started going crazy. And then Steven pulled a frickin' sword out of Lion's head.
This is weird, right?
After some well-placed tennis practice, the machine hits the big one. And we end the episode on a nice little note. Again, not the most important episode, but there's nothing bad about it, so here it is. Steven floats. After finally coming back home, after a very long trip, Steven is happy as a bunny, hopping around the place and glad to see everything that he touches. But then he gets so happy he literally jumps into the sky, And this is where Steven discovers his brand new power. He can change the rate of his descent, or maybe in a looser sense, he can lessen the gravity on himself, which is why he can jump so high. He's over the moon with this, almost literally, until he discovers that he can't quite control it yet and becomes stuck falling at a snail's pace towards the ground. So Steven, with some effort, manages to contact the gems, and basically the only way to get him down is to wait it out. So they hang out with him all night, and all the while Steven is desperate to get down before he runs out of time because of that one important thing that he's missed out on for too long. A fresh baked donut at the Big Donut just for him. This episode has a lot of whimsy, a lot of heart to it because it was nice seeing the gems stay out with him, and of course a new power for Steven. It's a lot going for this episode. But really, this is just an overall nice episode, and that's okay. We'll live with that. And the last episode not to break the top 100 is Onion Trade. Now, I might get a lot of flack for this one, but hear me out. Onion is definitely the best side character in all of Steven Universe, but it did not start that way, and I'll show you why. Onion Trade, for the first half of itself, is boring. Let's be honest, no one wanted to hear Steven talk about guys. These really boring action figures that not even a child of the modern age would have any interest in. And we have pet rocks. In any case, Steven has lost his best guy, Ranger Guy, and needs to get another one. So he buys as many guys as he can get, only to discover that they're all Dave Guy, the worst guy of them all. Man, it's not going to get annoying at all that I have to say Guy over and over again. But then he discovers that Onion has a Ranger Guy. So he asks for a trade. Onion, in his own silent way, says no. So Steven desperately tries to find a way to get more guys to make the trade better. And thanks to Amethyst, finds a solution. A weapon that can copy and create anything. Repeat, anything. So he desperately tries to make as many Dave guys as he can to make it worth one Ranger Guy. But upon seeing the magic wand that Steven possesses, Onion has only one thing in mind. Give me the wand, and let all hell break loose. And boy did he. In one glorious moment, Onion's legend was born. Using the wand, Onion creates a tidal wave of Dave guys, and goes to battle with the Crystal Gems, the only resident of Beach City to do so, and actually is winning. With some effort by Steven, with an epic takedown, he manages to disarm Onion, and everything wraps up in a nice little bow. And the whole heart of the episode is that Onion is lonely, waiting for his dad to come home every day. The first time we've seen Yellowtail, and we feel bad for Onion, which is why we like him so much, because combined with his chaotic side, Onion is overall just an awesome character. But we cannot forget that it took half an episode and unlimited uses of the word guy to get there. But don't worry, there's a lot more where he came from. He? Maybe it. I just really don't know anymore. Well, this episode is solid, and definitely deserves recognition, but it's just not good enough to reach the top 100 because there's literally that many good episodes to go. So, we'll leave it here at a nice note. And that really tells you just how good of a series we're talking about here. And with that, we only have another 100 episodes to go. If you haven't already, click the link to the lower right to start from the very bottom to see what the worst episodes were all the way up to this one. And make sure to subscribe below to see my next episode where we finally begin the top 100 Steven Universe episodes. I'm Professor Phoenix, and thanks for watching.